all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Welcome to Veterans Radio. I am Jim Fausone. I'm the officer of the deck today. We've got some great programs for you. I think you'll find very interesting. We always want to remind you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or by going to veteransradio.net, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.net. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We also want to thank Eisenhower Center. It's a brain injury recovery center. Learn more about eisenhowercenter.com. They're located in Michigan and in Florida. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. We want to thank VetBiz Central, which is part of the U.S. Small Business Association, VBOC, Vet Business Outreach Centers. VetBiz Central covers Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio, and can be reached at vetbizcentral.org. Let's move on to our programs. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio in the spotlight this month as a member of the Association of Michigan Military Organizations, or AMO, the Michigan Heroes Museum. We're talking to its executive director, John Ryder. John, welcome to Veterans Radio again.
Well, hello there. How are you doing today?
We're doing great. We're glad to have you on. Just to remind our Veteran Radio listeners that Veterans Radio America has a partnership with AMO to bring you a quick look at Michigan military organizations that support the history of military service here in the state of Michigan. And we encourage you to visit AMO on Facebook and this particular organization by visiting it this season. John, let's talk about what's sort of unique about the Michigan Heroes Museum in Frankenmuth, Michigan.
So at the Michigan Heroes Museum, we tell the stories of over 850 Michigan servicemen, women, and astronauts. And they're amazing stories, whether Al Warden from Apollo 15, the All-University of Michigan flight crew, or Dwayne Hackney, the most decorated enlisted airman ever, or Sergeant Major Ken Rice out of the Marine Corps, who was POW, captured in Bataan, and survived the second atomic bomb as he was in a coal mine working as a prisoner of war after the attack on Nagasaki. So we've just got amazing stories of our individuals from throughout Michigan, whether they were born here, whether they just served at a base here, whether they lived in Michigan their whole life other than their service to our country, or maybe they just retired here. We tell the stories of those individuals, and they are our truest heroes.
In the Michigan Heroes Museum has a long history. Tell us how it started and how it got to where it is today.
Sure. So we've been an organization since November 1976, but the actual museum got started by an amazing guy, Navy vet, Stan Bozich. And before he joined the Navy and served during Korea, he was actually Stan, starting maybe as early as 13 years old or so. He and his brothers walk up and down the alleyways in Detroit area, in Metro Detroit area, and see things that the World War II vets had brought home, whether it's their Navy duffels or whatever, and moms and wives were cleaning out the house and throwing that stuff away. These guys would pick it up in their little red wagon, quite literally, and go and knock on the door and try to find the servicemen or women that belonged to, and talk to them and try to get their stories. And he really had a passion for that. After he began to collect some of that stuff, the brothers, they all just realized that it's so much more than just a collection of things. This is their histories. It's an amazing part of world history, and that dovetails into specific Michigan personal histories.
Well, it's one of those things when you go through a museum such as this, you realize what your friends and neighbors, or maybe the grandparents of your friends and neighbors did in service of the country, and it's really pretty surprising, isn't it?
Absolutely. We've got so many stories that people come in here. We just had somebody come in here and recognize the last name is the same name as they had, and they got thinking, and they said, well, boy, I bet you he's a second or third cousin somewhere down the line. And he started trying to track his history back to this particular individual, and I'm confident that they're related somewhere. But yeah, it's just quite amazing when we get somebody in here from Ludington or Livonia or Mackinac or even above the Straits. They come in and they go, oh my gosh, you got somebody from our town represented, or from our county, or in that's the thing. People that have served our country, even though we're less than 1% of the population serves nowadays today, they're still your hero next door, the people that you never knew served, or maybe you knew they served, but you didn't know what they did. We may have stories of people that or actually from your neck of the woods here at our museum, and I almost guarantee that we do.
And you tell not only the stories of these men, primarily men, but men and women who served from all eras of combat, but you also tell their stories after they get out. There's a Medal of Honor recipient who went on to be a doctor. Who doesn't want to be known for what he did in the service, but he's a Medal of Honor recipient.
Yeah, so Dr. Furlong, he was at the time in World War I. He's the only Michigan Medal of Honor World War I out of the U.S. Army. And as he was in service, he as a young first lieutenant, they're in a battle with a German French line. Their unit, his captain is shot down in this battle, and they're about 100 yards from the trench, and he orders one of his grenadiers to crawl up through the barbed wire in the bomb craters and get as close as he can to the opposition trenches there, and try to throw grenades to render neutral the 4 Maxim machine guns that they had set up above their trench. And the grenadier does that. He after an hour or so, he gets close enough where he's able to start throwing the grenades, and he pulls the pins and throws them. And Harold Furlong is back, like I said, about 100 yards away, and he's watching as those 4 machine gunners, in turn, those grenades are getting awful close. They stand up and jump down into the trenches so they can have more cover. And once the 4th guy jumped into the trench, he jumped up and started running towards the trench. Now, when he realized that the end of the trench wasn't too far away, he actually ran around the edge of the trench, and he ran around behind the trench, and he slid down there, and he waited for those gunners to show back up. And after those grenades stopped going off, those machine gunners crawled back up into their Maxims, and they started returning fire or firing upon his men. And as they were doing that, they didn't pay attention that somebody had gotten around behind him, and he was able to work his way forward and fire 4 times, eliminating those men. That those Germans that were manning those Maxims, they couldn't hear him. They were making too much noise themselves. And he then stood up and he walked to the edge of the trench, and he pointed his rifle down the trench, and those 20 men left in that trench all surrendered to that one man.
But the point, but you know, this is a great Medal of Honor story, and a great Michigander who went on to become a medical doctor, delivered thousands of babies, and you tell that story. And I want to get you to where I saw it, because I think, tell us about how the last year the pandemic has nudged, encouraged, forced the museum to get some of its stories out, its educational efforts out to a wider audience who couldn't visit during the last year.
Yeah, exactly. So we've tried Facebook Live videos. We've done some of that. We've done some YouTube videos where we've had actually Frank Beckman narrated the video that I believe you probably saw, with stories of Christina Hammock-Cook, our astronaut from the state of Michigan, the currently serving most recent astronaut who went up into space, spent 11 months up there, and was the longest female ever fly, American female to fly in space. And she was part of the first all female spacewalk, where she and Jessica Meir both went out on a spacewalk together. We also told the story of Dwayne Hackney, the most decorated enlisted airman, and Christina Hammock-Cook. We got a grant from a local service organization where they underwrote the cost for doing that video, and it allowed us to offer that video to classrooms and others that wanted to see what it is that we have here at the museum, and maybe try to teach some of the lessons we teach in the museum without being able to visit the museum.
Well, the Michigan's Heroes Museum has been operating since 1976. It's had a couple of name changes over time, but it's always been housed in the greater Frankenmuth area. So if you're going up to Frankenmuth, build in time to stop into the museum. We're talking to its executive director, John Ryder. John, tell folks what your website is.
So our website's www.miheroes.org. So myheroes.org, with the my being the MI of Michigan.
John, there are 850 stories here. When people come in and you get you're back to, maybe it's next year when schools can come back in and do classroom tours, what are some of the favorite things that they like to see and do?
So I think what people are drawn to about our museum is that we tell their stories about them, right? So you can go to nearly any museum and you can find out information on weapons. You can find out information on weapons platforms and tanks and planes and living conditions and battles and things like that. We tell those stories, but only as they relate to a Michigan serviceman or woman. So the way that the story is told, a little different than most museums. Grass Lake Museum also does a little bit. Actually, they do a lot of storytelling also, like we do. But there's those type of military museums are really rare. Most of the times you hear and see the things that were used, and people are just starting to understand that the individual histories are what's really important. So we've made sure that that's our number one focus. We've got items around the museum that we don't label because we want people looking at the individual stories.
Well, you've got a great executive board and board members at large and advisory board members and staff. I mean, it's a really well-run organization. But tell us why this kind of regional museum is important to, or should be important to the younger generation.
Well, as people nowadays, like I mentioned earlier, only approximately 1% of the people serve. And a lot of people, their grandfathers served, their grandmothers, maybe great grandfathers and things like that. They themselves hadn't served, and they haven't had the ability to understand what that service means. What we'd like to do, and the rest of the ammo museums also would like to do, is let people know what it is that people that had served had went through, whether they're going up and touring the USS Edson, or they're over in Grass Lake or East Point, or over in Jackson, or Muskegon, that they can go to a local military museum there and they can learn about just a little segment about what the servicemen and women that they know may have went through, and a little bit about their experience. So we've got some amazing military museums here in Michigan, and that's the reason why AMMO is just such a unique organization, where we've all decided to work together in order to tell these stories and make sure that these histories are not forgotten.
Well, it's so important, and nowadays there's just not enough time, whether it's in grade school or high school, to teach this history. And even in college, there's not these kind of history programs that really tell what service is about and what the sacrifices that these Michigan residents went through, whether it be in Korea, Vietnam, World War II, World War I. Is the museum also beginning to think about how it displays and tells the stories of Michiganders who've been over in the Gulf Wars in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Yeah, so we do have War on Terror Gallery. Kind of interesting. We're just now starting to get the stories of the Vietnam veterans. It took them over 50 years to realize that, hey, you know what I did was important also. So most of those individuals, until the last 5 years or so, they didn't think they were deserving. And that's what we're finding with our War on Terror stories right now. Most of the people that have served they say, hey, you know what? You got up the real heroes, the people who perished in the line of duty. Those stories are the ones that need to be told. But I don't care if you're a clerk typist or a cook or frontline battle company or just what. Guess what? We want to tell your story here, because there are so many people that have served that you will represent, and your story will dovetail with theirs, and so many families that can learn about people's service through your story, that we would love to tell it here at our museum.
Well, I think that's a great point, because so many of us serve, but we're not at the tip of the spear. We're a support team. We're logistics. Maybe we were the ship drivers, as the Marines called the Navy,
right?
Or the flying the planes. So it's all those stories are important, because it also educates the families of the kids who want to join the service that maybe that's what my kid wants to do. He wants to be a drone pilot or in cyber intelligence, and he's going to be fine. He's not going to be at the tip of the spear. So those are great stories to tell. But this isn't easy to do, and it isn't easy to keep it alive as long as you have up in Frankenmuth. John, how is this funded?
So we are funded exclusively private donations and corporate donations right now. We don't receive any state monies currently, and not that we wouldn't. We just don't. And we appreciate the individuals that support our museum, understand what it is that we're doing, and help us out, as well as every ammo organization. I'll tell you what, there's no museum that's going to make it unless they're subsidized somehow. And you're never going to make it on just your admission. So our subsidies come from our loyalist fans and the individuals who understands what it is that we're doing and want to help us continue the legacy that we've begun here.
And we're talking to John Ryder, who's the executive director of Michigan Heroes Museum up in Frankenmuth, Michigan. John, if somebody's out there and says, man, this is a worthy cause, I'd like to support it a little bit, or maybe it's a business and a corporation who says, I want to get behind this a little bit, how do they do that?
So they can call me directly at the museum at 989-652-8005. I'll give that number again here in just a little bit. But they can also go to our website, and we have a little information there about donating. And once again, that's at www.miheroes.org. Or, like I said, call me at 989-652-8005. My name is John Ryder, and I'll be glad to help, talk to you, and we'll see if we can work together. That, and the same's true with individual stories. If somebody has a story they'd like us to tell here at the museum, we would be glad to tell the stories of Michigan servicemen and women. And we're always on the lookout for new stories that we can tell. And so if you know a veteran or you have a family member that served, and that stuff is in no better hands than with the family, right? That story is loved and cherished by them. But eventually the family generally will lose touch with great grandfather or something, and the maybe not understand the story as much as the earlier generations had. And that's one of the places where the museum can come in and help make sure that story never gets forgotten.
That's right. It should not be forgotten. And the Michigan Heroes Museum is a 501c3, so if you'd like to donate, give John a call at the museum or go to the website and reach out there. John, as we come to the end here, as people begin thinking about, hey, I want to do something this spring, the family's been vaccinated, we want to do a day field trip, something like that, is the museum open? Tell us what spring and summer looks like for the museum.
Yeah, so we've been open since early June last year when the governor opened back up the state. We've remained open since then, and we absolutely would love to have your family or your group stop into the museum, where we will happily greet you, tell you a little bit about the museum, allow you to explore it yourself, or accompany you as you go through the museum. And we just ask that everybody follows whatever is recommended at the state at the time that you stop in. I know the governor has laid out a plan for relaxing the regulatory restrictions, and we're going to comply with what we're asked to do. And we're also going to ask that our public visitors remain just as safe as they can, and that they don't get themselves and their loved ones sick as well.
Well, this is one of these stops that on something like TripAdvisor gets 5 stars all the time, and you can bribe the rest of the family maybe with some chicken or with some Christmas decorations. But make sure you stop in at Michigan Heroes Museum. John Ryder, Executive Director, we want to thank you for spending a little time with us today on Veterans Radio.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Fausone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows by going to veteransradio.net. And until next time, you are dismissed.
If you have a VA claim denied by the Board of Veterans' Appeals, contact Legal Help for Veterans at 1-800-693-4800. They're experts in handling cases before the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. Their number again, 1-800-693-4800.
We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, NVBDC.org, the U.S. Small Business Administration Veterans Business Outreach Center, Eisenhower Center, VA Ann Arbor Health Care System, the Vietnam Veterans of America Charles S. Kettles Chapter, Ann Arbor, Michigan, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423 in Ann Arbor, and the American Legion Press Corn Post 46, also in Ann Arbor. They keep us on the air, as does your support. Go to Facebook, go to veteransradio.net, and support our efforts. And until next time, you are dismissed.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.